earliest roots of science can be traced to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia in around 3000 to 1200 BCE. Their contributions to mathematics, astronomy and medicine entered and shaped Greek natural philosophy of classical antiquity, whereby formal attempts were made to provide explanations of events in the physical world based on natural causes. Nowadays, young people have an almost free access to a high-speed electronically world we have become to know as the Internet. Wikipedia in this is a frequently visited site for students to upgrade their already possessing knowledge. But how reliable is the written knowledge we can find on the Internet? Do we have to add a form of creative and critical thinking to this avalanche of information? Can we take this information, discuss it, and convert it all into a new evolution in science? I am your host, Maria Anna van Driel, and you are listening to The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. And this week, I'm speaking with Dr. Keith McNally, who has created a project-based learning environment in college classrooms, and discuss with him if we have to take a second look at the way we teach today.
I come from a background of very structured educational training. So it's you asked, I'm a doctor. So what are you a doctor of? I'm a doctor of education. Well, what is a doctor of education? Well, a doctor of education is somebody who administers or becomes an administrator of an educational system. But I never did that. So I never walked into the administrative role. I always stayed in the classroom. And so I'm always in the position to engage students, engage learning, promote, inquiry, promote investigation. And so with that, I've adopted this project-based learning, I call it a culture of learning. So there's a lot to be said there. So we could go in many different directions in terms of, our conversation. It really depends on how you want to get there. I do have some ideas on time travel, but of course I can never prove it because I'm not in that science field. So I don't work for CERN, or I'm not trying to accelerate particles any faster than I can do it. So my focus in the classroom is to help students really engage in their thinking process, because my students primarily are adult learners, and specifically adult learners transitioning from the military into a civilian sector. And because of that, they've really, being in the military, have a very linear way of thinking about something. So there isn't a whole lot of, well, what do you think about what we should do here? Or do you have any thoughts on how to solve this problem? No, there's already a book. There's a manual. It says, when you face this situation or problem in whatever role that you are in, you follow these procedures. And if we are going to transition, or if I'm going to help them transition out of that, very structured mindset into a civilian workplace that really needs, as you had just said, thinkers, problem solvers, people who can analyze, critically think, provide all of those efforts and energies into solving a problem, and there may not be a predetermined solution for that problem, then where do you go? What do you do? And what you don't want to do, or what I don't want to see my students do, is stop. Well, there is no solution to this problem, so I can't do anything about that. Well, why not? and now I don't always face that situation in the classroom, but it's a potential to face that situation in the classroom. And so I'm helping them, hopefully I'm helping them to say, you know, what questions do we need to ask and who do we need to ask? And then how do we collaborate on finding the right answer?
Well, Dr. McNally, thank you so much for this intro. And welcome to the radio program of The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. As I just said, The Next Truth has made this next step in this project for making STEM subjects or STEAM subjects more, drawing more awareness to this for young people to explore all kinds of science. As you say, you teach or you are a doctor with a structure thinking. Do you think that we should add something to this term of STEM or STEAM, as some people called it?
Well, it depends on what you are trying to add to it. So from my perspective and what my colleagues are kind of thinking, it's just an acronym. It really, and that's all it is. So if we pull out those words of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and we get the acronym STEAM. But I think it's really a push. We're trying to leverage a couple of different ideas, and so let me kind of talk about that, and then you kind of engage me in certain things. So from the beginning, and I'm going to pull out American history a little bit, is that we were an industrial society. We were engaged in creating things, solving problems, inventing things. And so even in my daughter's 5th grade classroom, they talked about the Industrial Revolution. People were trying to find more efficient ways of simply doing things, traveling across the continent, traveling across the river, you know, reaping up what they've planted, those kind of things. And then over time, we've developed those things, but business gets in the way. Business gets in the way of ingenuity, meaning that if we can do something cheaper, let's find a way of doing it cheaper. So at least here in America, that all the industrial components that build us up as a strong nation were moved outside of the country, and we become a service provider, okay? So with that as a framework that kind of guided education, we were just developing people who could provide a service and not really engaging students in a learning process. And so moving, it's the pendulum. So we move from here to here, and now we've lost all that thinking, the inquiry and the investigation, what is possible. And with the explosion of, you know, how we're using technology now, we're trying to push it back. And so there's never really ever a balance. I don't know why there's never really a balance of the two extremes, doing one thing, doing the other. But now that there's we're inundated, we're integrated, we are consumed with technology. It's going to be, for good or bad, it's going to be part of our livelihood. Basically, we don't walk away from our phones because we can't, because all of our apps are there. Literally, our bank is there, our friends are there, or wherever. Push of a button and we're communicating with somebody. But we have to come back to the fact that we now need people, the next generation and the generation after that, to kind of ensure that the technology is working, it's supporting, and it's providing the services that we need. So we're going back into that STEM idea. And so even with the promotion of the driverless automobile, or, you know, wanting to go into outer space and explore Mars a bit more, you know, whether or not that's possible, I'm not sure. It's not my field of expertise, but if those are the things that are going to be part of our society, not just American society, but global society, we need to go back to STEM. We need to go back to the creativeness, the creative juices, and I preach 3 words: inquiry, investigation, and collaboration. Without those 3 things, that doesn't have to be project-based learning. It could be problem-based learning or Montessori or inquiry-based. They all are founded on three things: inquiry, investigation, and collaboration. And I don't care, you could reframe them in any words that you want, they still come back to those three things. So we're getting back to the idea that we need to teach or reteach our younger generations how to think, because I think that's been lost.
How do we do that? How do we take this second look at this teaching we do today, and well, give young people the chance to, well, let their mind explode into the most remote corners of science?
I think we have to step away from fear, to be quite honest. I think, and my only frame of reference is the K-12 school system here in America, in that we are a teaching culture and not a learning culture, and that's how I'm going to call it, meaning that teachers are taught to teach. They're taught a curriculum, they're taught a methodology, and it's a one way, it's directed, it's from them to the student. And so if they block it out, like, for example, they have a unit that they have to get across. It's part of the curriculum, it's a unit. And there are 5 pieces to that unit. This is just hypothetical. This could go in any discipline, any direction. The teacher says, we're going to learn these 5 things over the course of the next 2 weeks. Okay, so it's already structured, it's already planned, it's already determined. So what's the student there to do? The student is either going to absorb the information or they're not going to absorb the information, but there's no engagement. So the student isn't being asked to necessarily be creative, be inquiry-based, learning how to ask questions. It was just say, this is what we're going to do. And really, the teacher's saying, this is what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter really what you're going to do. You can just sit there. And I know that's kind of overstating the fact, but what if we flipped that? What if we just said, this is what I want to cover over the next, and this is just the teacher talking to the students. These are the things I want to talk about over the next 2 weeks. What do you know about these things? What have you heard about these things? And now the framework is different. She's not saying, or he's not saying, the teacher isn't saying, this is what we're going to do. The teacher has already started the conversation with questions, inquiry. There goes my inquiry. What do you know about these things? Have you heard of these things before? And if so, where? So now it's not a frame of pushing out. It's now, when you're asked a question, I think it's human nature to try to figure out an answer. So if we're trying to figure out an answer, we're going in the right direction. And so that really is where the culture starts. It's not by saying we're going to do this. It's by saying, how are we going to do it? And what's the starting point? So I think if we get there and we take away the fear of allowing teachers to kind of talk to students in that way, then we're moving in a good direction. And it's regardless of grade level.
So it is not that we are with STEM subjects and programs in that, not that we are trying to teach the student, but we are trying to teach the teacher.
I think there's going to be, at some point, a rebuilding of that culture. So yeah, because in certain, and I've taught, actually, in this past week, I went to a webinar who's actually, the school system has integrated PBL. They don't call it PBL, they call it something different. And like I said, the vocabulary is still going to be, even though it's different, it's still saying the same thing. So they don't even call themselves teachers, they call themselves mentors. They don't call it a curriculum, we're going on a quest. So you see the idea. I call it investigation, they're simply reframed it as a quest. Yeah, so you could look at it as being a detective trying to solve a problem. You could be an adventurer going on a quest or a journey, but it's the process of finding things out. So when the teacher is comfortable with that mindset, with that ideology, with that culture, then I think that they can kind of expand that culture to allow students to be comfortable with that too, because right now everything is, you know, in things that we find on the web, it's easy to kind of go somewhere and just get data, get chunks of knowledge. What do you
Right.
do with that? You know, what am I going to do with that? And how do I know if it's true? And how do I know if it's relevant or applicable? Without asking questions, we don't know. We just take it as face value, but we don't know what to do with it.
So what you are saying is that we can take, as I said in your intro, can take the information, the avalanche of information from the internet and discuss it, convert it into a conversation when in the moment that we also apply critical thinking and without fear, as you say. Is this something that your website is discussing, or is that more like information for mentors, as you say, to find the information? Or is your website also discussing these STEM subjects and learning processes?
Well, my website is devoted to the culture of education. I do have some STEM ideas because specifically I work in two STEM areas. I work in the cloud, so cloud infrastructure and computer information infrastructure. That's kind of my background. And I also do some basic robotics. So if you're into the Raspberry Pi, physical computing, Lego Mindstorms, those elementary robotic concepts, because they build when you get it from the elementary level into the college level, they expand, but without the foundation, you know, you don't have anything. But my website and my vlogs on my YouTube channel really focus on building, understanding what project-based learning is, understanding what inquiry is, building that culture. And I'm now starting to have those conversations like we're having with my colleagues and other people in the education industry to talk about the culture of project-based learning. So you'll see that if you go to my playlist, and there's going to be the introduction, and then there's a interview section, and then there's a building a culture of section. So I really want to get, I really want students, I really want school systems to be comfortable with the idea that we can use inquiry and we could use investigation as a culture for learning rather than just being very structured and very strict in terms of how we approach that environment.
Well, most of the times, and similar to me, when I try to study a subject, as soon in the moment that we are, well, let our minds slide into all these, well, areas that has nothing to do with focusing, somehow you understand and absorb the material way, way better, and it sticks longer into your mind. Well,
True.
it's my experience, that is.
Yes.
But besides your website promoting a different manner of teaching, it also shows YouTube clips, and I visit your website.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I saw a video message from Gideon. I hope I pronounced his name correctly.
Correct.
And yeah, he was expressing his gratitude on how you have supported him during his study. Can anybody make contact with you so that they can study together with you via Skype, for instance, or another medium? Can anybody contact you?
Absolutely. So my primary platform is LinkedIn, so I'm always available there, and it's easy to find me there. Just Keith J. McNally. I've left the doctor off, so it's easier to kind of find me. But if you go to my YouTube channel, you could always make comments and connect for me there, or from my website, which is drkeithmcnally.com. you can either get on there's a Calendly link, so you could get on my calendar, or you could go straight to my email at drkeith@drkeithmcnally.com. So yeah, there's more than one way to get in touch with me. But for the most part, I do hang out on LinkedIn a lot, just making those connections and having those conversations.
Yeah, I saw you skip by a couple of times. Um, what, and this is what is your personal favorite topic to teach young students or fresh students or even younger people? What is your favorite topic to teach, and
Well,
why?
if I'm gonna focus on the student, I'm gonna focus, because it is what I do, I'm gonna focus on cloud computing. So I'm gonna focus on understanding how cloud infrastructure provides us access to artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, and that general platform. So, and with I say that to say this: that's going to be our future, for good and bad, for whatever it is. So understanding how the technology works, one, is going to be important. Two, it's going to be part of your livelihood. It's already how we connect, because we're 6 hours apart and we're using Skype as the transition medium. So knowing how to use these things, not being afraid of them, but really understanding the technology behind them, is where I would get started. So that's kind of who I am in terms of a STEM educator. I also like the robotics idea. I'm partnered with other people to provide. I've got a Mindstorms robot behind all of this, so I do like to play with robot.
Like you on the
Well,
wall.
I've got Lego behind me, but I've actually got the Mindstorms robot behind me as well, on the other side of the wall. So that's always going to be a point of interest. But I like the Internet of Things. I like being able to use or leverage the internet to kind of make things happen, to be quite honest. So if I'm sitting here and I have a drone out there in the world, I can navigate that drone right from where I'm sitting. It may not be optimal, but with multiple cameras and with the Internet of Things, I can make that happen. We can communicate across the globe, pretty much, because I've done it already. And so knowing how to leverage that technology is going to be really, really important. And so that would be my favorite thing, and always learning more how to use that. So if I could give 2 examples of how valuable this is, please let me. So in my classroom, we go through an 18-week program, like I said, helping military veterans transition out successfully and starting their IT careers. Well, as part of that, I start leveraging the cloud, Microsoft's Azure cloud. This is Skype, so this is a Microsoft product as well. And so at the tail end of it, which is kind of where we are now, so we've got 4 weeks left of the program, I then say, pick a technology that's of interest to you and do a deeper research, a deeper dive into the idea. So this past week, literally, I had 2 students talk about artificial intelligence. So they did a presentation and a demonstration of how AI can be used. Well, first they developed the engine. So it was actually having to teach itself how to do something, and then once it's learned how to do something, it can be applied to another situation, which is really cool. And then another group of students, 2 students, learned how to leverage Internet of Things. So they could actually sit there at their desk and be communicating with a computer in another state, in another city, even across the globe, quite frankly, because the infrastructure gives us that capability. And so these are the things that are valuable and are of interest. And so I kind of let my students then find that passion, find that interest point, because that's really what's going to get them to the next level, is engaging in things that are of interest to them.
Yes, this fiery passion without fear, or without the fear of making mistakes that somebody is ridicule them or anything in that direction, so that they can explore and create new laws and perhaps new laws in artificial intelligence. Who knows? I think that is the future as well. Yes.
True,
So
true.
um, we had a brief conversation in front, and I fired this question at you about you being certificated. No, sir.
Certified.
Yes, my English is very bad. From Microsoft and Cisco, but you said this is not correct. I was incorrect in that. So please explain where your certificates come from, what they are, and where did you
Sure,
start?
sure,
MOOCs?
sure. So every vendor has their own like training structure. So for the infrastructure that's pertained to what we call on-premise, so inside of a building, you need appliances such as switches, routers, firewalls, and these are actual compute systems.
Mhm.
They're actual machines. And Cisco developed them. So there's a company called Cisco, CISCO. And in order to be efficient, I guess that's the best word, you become certified. So you study for a test, you take the test, and you have a certain base of knowledge. And typically companies that hire for certain positions are looking for, and it's really a peer review. It's saying that you know how to do certain things. Really, you learn by doing, but at the very least, it's an entry level test to kind of says, yeah, I do know certain things. So I was at one point Cisco certified, and now I'm what we call Microsoft certified. So I'm Microsoft certified in the cloud, and based on my training and experience, I'm also a certified trainer. So I've got that credential. Microsoft certified trainer is really a credential that's based on your certification and your experience working with the technology.
And you teach your students this as well. You provide them with these papers so that they can step into a next level of STEM programs or teachings. You provide these.
Yes. So the classroom that I'm involved in is focused on Microsoft technologies, server technologies, and cloud technologies. So they're going to learn all of those compute systems and how they work. And from that perspective, they get to, study for and take the fundamentals like the Azure, the AZ900, the AZ104, 300, 301, and then they build from there. So yes.
Now, I do want to have this question in the background. Our listeners do not see this, but in the background there are a couple of, well, Superman images, or what is it? Lego, I believe it is. What is that in the background?
Okay, so the pictures that you see, for example, the Superman here,
Yes.
those are gifts from my daughter. So I get Father's Day and I get my birthday as very special days. And so she gives me cards, Superman or superhero, and so she kind of sees me in that light. As she gets older, probably not so much, but as so she's still young, so I still get to be that Superman figure in her life. On the other side of that, all of these little things that you see are Lego. So they're Lego set builds. So this is, of course, Batman, and these superheroes are called Nexo Knights. And so if you think about, fantasy Dungeons and Dragons, they're kind of like that person in armor with either a sword or a lance, and so they're my superheroes.
And
And
so
then there's a camper.
yes, I saw that. Oh, and I was thinking, oh, they said a super camper from the X-Men or something. I thinking like that. So, but this is also what you promote on your website. I saw a couple of pictures of you and your daughter, and with these Lego or these what is these toys. So this is what you also promote on your but how do you apply that to STEM?
Well, the Lego build is, wow, that has many levels. So if you just follow the basic Lego set build, you learn process. So you learn that there's a foundation built and then there's things added on top of that. At the very least, you get into an idea that you can, once you learn how to build something that's pre-designed, take it apart and then rebuild something of your own value, something that's important to you. Redesign the pieces. I tend to like what I do, so I tend to like the sets that I build. But the reason why I do this with my daughter, and we spent the entire month of December 2020, we did these miniature builds. And so it was the Lego City Advent calendar, and they're miniature builds. They take less than a minute mostly, but they're lots of fun. I've talked with parents, I want my son, my daughter to just be off the computer. At the very least, there's only so much computer time that you should probably have. And then at the rest of it, you should be like reading or building or drawing or riding your bike or playing, so that your brain isn't just always focused on the monitor. It's really easy to do that. So, I just tend to like Lego. I like the building process. I like what it does. My daughter actually prefers to draw. She draws. So talk about art. She likes to draw and she likes to design. She likes to paint. So I applaud that, and I encourage her to do those things because it gets her off the computer. So that's really good. It's really good.
Drawing creates probably philosophers, deep thinkers. Lego can create people studying engineering. Dr. McNally, do you have any additional advice for young people or fresh students who like to step into STEAM or STEM subjects?
What I would say, and this goes back to, you called me doctor, and I said part of that is having to write that dissertation. And if you've never done that, and if you never want to do it, don't ever do it, because it's a long, tedious process, and I don't always recommend it to everybody. But my dissertation focused on the disconnection between traditional college learning, the academics, and the career services that were part of the traditional setting. So there's school, and then there's career development. Now, and my dissertation was written, 10, 11 years ago. Since then, there's been this push for for-profit universities to kind of merge the two, take away the 4-year study process, narrow it down to 2, maybe 2.5, 3 years, remove some of the excess academics, and really focus on job skills. The idea of that can be debated for probably forever. So what's the value of learning? Do I want to learn to do a job? Do I want to learn for learning's sake? We're not going to have that discussion here. But I say all that to say is that from a young age, I think and I believe that innately we kind of know who we are and what we want to do. We don't always get permission to do it. And for example, when I was younger, I used to watch, races, auto races, NASCAR. And so I wanted to be a NASCAR driver. But I was never allowed to actually find out how to do that. So you know, I didn't grow up in the richest neighborhood and all that kind of stuff, and so the opportunities weren't there. But what if the opportunity was there? So let's just say I was given an opportunity, like when I got older, got involved in, you know, the small car racing, the go-kart racing. Say that was an opportunity. And I liked it and I wanted to pursue it further. That's a good thing. But what if I didn't like it? Well, I would know that. So I would know that, okay, I've had that experience and I don't like it. I think there's such a lack of opportunity for young people just in general to say, I don't know what the statement is, I don't know what I don't know. That's true. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know if you like it because you haven't done it. So I think getting young people exposure to just different things, and I think this is why STEM is so valuable, because it does give students the exposure. You know, let's go out and plant a garden. Let's go out and shoot a rocket up into the sky. Let's go out and fly a drone. Let's do these things. And if you like it, we could do more of it. If you don't like it, we could do something else. But it's doing it that really leads us in one direction or another. We're going to do more of it, or we're going to do something else because we don't like it. And it's just not being able to do something that kind of stops us from understanding what we want to do. And so what happened, and let me give you an example real quick. So this nonprofit organization out of Africa comes to me last year and says, we're starting this pilot program. And part of it, we want to teach STEM and specifically coding logic. So basic, not even, they said, we don't even have computers yet. And so, but we want to teach coding logic to these young kids, you know, first, second, third, fourth grade. So we're talking young kids, six through 10. And so I thought about that and I'm thinking, how do I do that? Because they came to me and I said, well, we don't have any money to pay you, but we would love your help in this matter. I said, all right, well, let me think about it. So what I went and did, and it's actually on my YouTube channel. So there's a whole, 50 videos on talking about basic computational logic, just a very basic level. And I developed a pen and paper, board game system that just does that. And so the game is designed that you will go on a journey. You have to go from point A to point B, and you have to collect code in order to solve a coding problem. And so there has to be some back-end training, but it doesn't require any computers to do it. So you're just learning basically the sequence of instructions in order to solve the problem. So coding logic is about understanding how things follow a sequence, a process, in order to have a starting point and an ending point to solve the problem. And so I kind of gave them that. And I think with that basic exposure to say, oh, I just solved the problem, that's a good thing. And so what I've told them I would do is that when they're ready, I'm going to send them a Raspberry Pi, which is a basic computer. It's a very small computer. It's a Raspberry Pi. So it's not a real Pi, it's a computer. So I'm going to send them a couple of these compute systems, and all they need to do is plug it in. They don't even need the internet, because those programming platforms such as Scratch, which is a visual drag and drop program, or Python, which is a text-based programming language, they could do that right there at their seat, and they don't need the internet, because they said having an internet connection is not always reliable. So having those basic pieces, first the game, so that they understand the logic, and then they could go into the computer and then kind of test what they've done on paper, kind of builds that. So again, it's being exposed to things. I think at an early age kind of really helps young people find out what they really want to do. At least it gives them that spark.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. We should for sure at this point of art, but not only in making a picture or painting, but also in dancing and critical thinking, being creative, and go out into the world, explore all kinds of sciences, like you say, find out which one is firing up your curiosity the most, so that you can go forward in that and, well, be the best in that one. I see, Dr. McNally, I see that the hour is almost over, so I'd like to thank you. Well, yeah, things go quick. I'd like to thank you for talking to you. But before we close out, can you tell us again where we can find more information on your workshops, your teachings, and how for people to contact you when they still have questions? And I think they do.
Okay. Again, always on LinkedIn, Keith J. McNally or Keith McNally, and look for my picture and you should find me real easy. I'm the guy who's going bald. drkeithmcnally.com is my website. You could go to the same place. You could just go look on YouTube for my videos. And of course, you could always send me an email. So all of that's good. And so I welcome, connect with me and all good.
Thank you all for tuning in this week on The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. Make sure to visit our website, www.nexttruth.com. That is nexttruth, all in one word.com. And let us know what you think about our podcast. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on our website in the section The Next Truth Podcasts. Or if you would simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us too. I am Maria Anna van Driel with The Next Truth. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.